Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome to the Standard of Truth podcast, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. There have been so many events that have been happening over the past couple of days. And in the course of all of the mayhem and confusion and just chaos, I sat and I noticed, or should I say, I observed something. And I had this thought come across my mind. And I was like, is DEI really helping us? Like, are we winning because we're now proponents of DEI? And I say we, but I'm not including myself in the we because I don't actually co-sign and affirm DEI. I'm kind of just one of those people that I just want the best person for the job, irrespective of their political positions. I don't care who they sleep with, what gender they are, or what ethnicity. Like, I don't need any of those vanity metric boxes checked in order for me to determine if I would hire someone or even vote for someone for that matter. And so as I was pondering this topic of DEI, particularly in light of what I witnessed in the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, it really got me to thinking that whether or not DEI was a good thing. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about that topic. But first, before I do that, let me show you the actual video footage that caused me to kind of think twice about this whole situation. So go ahead and take a look at this. Okay, so when I provide this commentary, I'm looking at this situation, as a civilian, right? Like, I don't have any military training. I've never been in law enforcement. However, this footage was taken from the aftermath after former President Trump was attempted to be shot and have his head blown off by a crazy, deranged individual that wanted to see him harmed. And what I witnessed in that footage was, now that, they're trying to whisk him off to safety. When I first saw that footage, the first thing that ran through my mind was, why are all of these women like female Secret Service agents? I was like, that's a lot of chicks, right? I mean, and they were out in full force. But what I noticed about them is that they looked very uncoordinated. They looked very confused, very unsure of themselves. They looked very, what is happening? I mean, ponytails are just flying all over the place. These are like little, like petite, short females. I was just like, listen, I don't necessarily think it is a good idea to have females as the point persons on Secret Service security detail. I just don't. Right. When I go to events like this, my first knee-jerk reaction is to not think about the possibility of something popping off. I just don't. I'm just there. I'm like, I want to have a good time. I'm fully present in the moment. But do you know who doesn't think like that? My husband. When we go to an event, my husband is very well aware of all threats, known and unknown, seen and unseen. He's paying attention to the exits. He's paying attention to the weird guy over there with the beard who looks like he's just shifty and a little suspect. He knows He sees things that I'll just be like, I didn't even notice that. Head is always on the swivel. He's enjoying, or at least attempting to enjoy himself, but there's a level of observation, keen observation that my husband has that I just don't. It doesn't make me less human. It doesn't make him more human. What it makes us is we're just living and functioning in our God ordained roles. It's just how God has wired us and how God has created us. And so what I want to do with this video, in light of this footage, and then another story that I'm going to bring in for us to discuss, I want us to discuss just the role of men and women and humanity as it relates to the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because in my opinion, from my estimation, in looking at all of the DEI hires that we have, and there are a lot of them, I don't necessarily think that making decisions to force diversity, equity, inclusion on the basis of external attributes, I don't think that that's been a good idea, and I don't think it's working for us. And so let me just help you guys understand humanity as revealed through the scriptures as it relates to male and female. Right? So God made man as male and female from the beginning. That's how it's always been, right? And he made us completely equal in value and in our full humanity. We're completely equal in value, yet there is a distinction in the way that we relate to one another and in the way that we function. The distinct roles of men and women, they are grounded in the nature of God. And you guys, we're just part of God's good creation. It's how things were before the fall. So where am I getting this idea from? When I examine the scriptures, particularly in 1 Corinthians, and I'm going to read it, I want you guys to understand something that the scriptures reveal about how God relates with mankind. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back to creation. And so 1 Corinthians 11, verse 1 through 3, I'll read it starting at 1. And this is the Apostle Paul speaking. He says, "Now I commend you because you remember me in everything and maintain the traditions, even as I delivered them to you. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ, the head of a wife is her husband, and the head of Christ is God." What I want you to understand, when I read that, what is the Apostle Paul trying to convey when he says the head of Christ is God, right? He says that what he is asserting is that within the Godhead, right, the triune nature of how God has revealed himself as one what and three whos, the Father has a role of authority and leadership with respect to the Son, though they are equal in deity and attributes. What the Apostle Paul does is he then takes this truth about the Trinity and he applies it to the relationship of a husband and wife. And so in marriage, as in the Trinity, there is equality in being and value, but there is a difference in roles, right? So when you hear 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3 read, when you hear that and you think deeply about the comparison that the Apostle Paul is making, these role distinctions are in no way to minimize the worth of men and women. Like, that is painfully obvious, and anyone that tries to make such an argument is just not being fair. Both are equally made in God's image. We are equally fallen. We are equally redeemable. And we are equal to be resurrected and glorified, those of us who are in Christ, right? This equality, it is expressed, however, with the husband serving in his God-ordained role as authority and servant leader. Notice that I did not say authoritarian dictator. Not that at all. But then we also see the complement of this with the wife fulfilling her vital role as supporter and helper in the family and in the church. Look at that. There's so much value here, but there's also so much distinction here. We actually have plenty of examples in the scriptures of women functioning in this vital role of support and helper in the family and in the church. And we see in scripture in the church, whether that's a woman opening up her home to the church, whether that's her financially supporting the work of the ministry in the church. Women were vital and pivotal in the ministry of the apostles, in the ministry of Jesus, yet they operated in their God-ordained role. And not once did we ever see this imbalance or this usurping of authority so that she could do what she wanted to do. We didn't see that. Male authority, according to the scriptures, it is to be expressed with love, humility, and respect. And then female submission, it's not this servile weakness, but rather it's a display of strength and trust in God as the woman uses all of her God-given abilities while refusing to usurp the male authority in her life. It is a beautiful balance when adhered to properly. But this DEI foolishness, I am of the opinion that it's just a prime example of how the fall has greatly distorted the harmonious yet distinct way that men and women were intended to function together. And God's people, you guys, the church, we're called to show the world, we're called to show them how men and women are meant to relate in this mutually beneficial way that glorifies and honors God. And when men and women, when we function in a complementarian way, this display is something so profound and mysterious because it mirrors the relationship between Jesus and his bride, which is the church. And so when Paul is referencing back in Genesis, and he makes the reference to the marriage between Adam and Eve as God originally created it, the Apostle Paul, what he's doing there is giving this theological explanation that shows God's purpose for all marriages, namely to be a picture of Christ and his church. So one might say, well, April, I hear all of that. But what does that have to do with mankind and how people in the world, namely men and women, relate to one another? I'm so glad you asked. I would say that this idea that humanity has evolved in such a way that the roles and the natural order of creation has somehow morphed and changed, so much so that now DEI is the normative standard, simply disregards common sense. Like, it doesn't even make sense. It just doesn't. To me, this is where the conversation simply becomes disingenuous. Listen, I get it. Most people hate God. Yes, they're God haters and they rebel against his design order all the time. And so because they hate God, they don't submit to his design and they don't submit to his law. I'll grant you that. But denying observable reality and the overwhelming lived experience of humans since the beginning of time, it just makes you look and sound like a fool. Right? Like, I'll be the first one to admit that, yes, women can do a lot of things. For example, I can outperform my husband on a PC or a Mac or a smartphone any day and twice on Sunday, right? I can. I also have an amazing memory bank, right? Where I can just remember and recall a bunch of useless facts that don't seem to be incredibly useful until he needs them. And then I can just recall, and he's like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. But let him ask me to build a suspension bridge or to deforest this area back here. And I'm going to look at him like he has two heads. I'm like, say, what? You want me to do what out there? No, I ain't going to be able to do that, sir. That's not going to happen. And so the question is, can a woman be the best sniper? Yes. Right? Like, I'm sure she can train and with vigorous training and effort, she can be one of the best snipers in the world. But can she flip a 300-pound man and beat him in a boxing match? I mean, I mean, I know some of y'all with the big backs, like some of y'all might be able to, but listen, I'm not talking about the outliers, right? Someone in the margins. I'm speaking in generalities here, outside of the outliers and the exceptions. Men are just better at these things. Men are faster at making decisions that require strategic, quick on your feet thinking without being bogged down into all the details. Men are less frantic, right? They're less frantic when it matters most. Their reflexes are faster. They have more upper body strength. Aside from our physical differences, there are just some roles that, in my opinion, men are better suited for. Listen, I'm experiencing my very own personal summer literally all year round because I'm just at that stage in life where my hormones are out of whack. It's called perimenopause. Many of you are walking alongside me as I suffer through this season in my life. There's no need for me to be ashamed about it, right? It's just a part of life. It's going to end eventually. I don't know when, but they say it's coming soon. It's just going to end. But I don't want a menopausal woman in the highest office of the land, namely the president. I just don't. Right? Like the brain fog, the emotional roller coaster, the mood swings. I'm sorry. I don't want certain people having access to nuclear codes or negotiating on my behalf with foreign world leaders. It's just out of order for me. This is really a capacity issue. It's a capacity issue because a 16-year-old has no business being the CEO of IBM. Why? Do they have the ability? No. So why are we okay placing people in roles not on the basis of their capacity or ability, but rather simply because they are female? That's just crazy to me. Like, we just refuse to concede the point that, yes, men are stronger. Deal with it. I'm sorry. I'm not less valuable because I can't bench press like a man, right? It's just the way God made us. My frame is smaller. My hands are smaller. And I got pretty big hands for a female, but overwhelmingly, these are tiny hands in comparison to a whole grown man. My stature is smaller. I'm 5'2". I know some of y'all be up in the weeds and you 6'4" as a woman, but that's not overwhelmingly. We are smaller. Truth be told, well, not these days. These days, with the way they doing food, the way we throwing it back and hiding it, that's not true, but y'all know what I'm saying. Truth be told, who wants us to buy into the idea that men and women are the same and that we can do the exact same things? The ones who believe that, you're just shaking your fist at God, right? You're mad at him as if he somehow made a mistake. Your problem with my physiology being different from a man's and not being able to do what he does or what is normative to a man, your issue is not with me, it's with your creator. The fact remains that God is the one who made us. He made us females less able to do some things, and he made men more able to do those things. And I think it's beautiful that he just left us with this harmonious solution. Like, he provided the answer. Despite our rebellion, we just don't like it. But here's I have a question that I want to pose to you guys. Are we seeing an uptick in role reversal because of how the pattern of the family has been altered? Like, I was talking to a friend today, and I realized, truth be told, we have this entire generation of men who have been raised by just a woman. And so our society is a reflection of this derelict of duty by fathers as well as rebellious women. And so when you take that, coupled with the impact of feminism, the female favorable aspect of the family court system, and then the rise of single mother households, women are raising boys who they want to date, right? So men the landscape of men and who they are is being fundamentally changed because these boys are being churned out to be super sensitive, all overly romantic and endearing, just full of his feelings, instead of men of yesteryear who were like, listen, you just gonna need to shut up and walk it off. Like, you're gonna be all right. Like, you're good. Like, man up, right? What we're seeing, this is starting to cause major problems in society. Right. So as it relates to DEI, it's not a matter of could I. The question needs to be, should I? Like, and we've become so wrapped up in our feelings about this issue that we've just abandoned common sense and what's best for human flourishing. And that's the scary part. And so what I've deduced is that this is really a worldview issue. This is a clash of worldviews, and now we can see in real time the harm that it's causing society. And so at the end of the day, I just want to have men operate and be challenged to be who God has created them to be. And I, as a woman, I don't want to get in the way of that. Right? Like, I don't want to jump on the front line and take a bullet for the president. I want a fully capable, brave man to do that. And so I'm curious to know, what do you guys think? Right? Let me know if you think DEI is working and that it has been a good introduction into the fabric of American society, or do you see how DEI is creating problems? And if we don't scale back and repeal a lot of our DEI decisions and moving forward, deal with merit, we're going to be in a really bad place. Regardless of what you think, let me know down in the comments below. Grace and peace.